Hello everyone. We'll finish up complex numbers with this video. And what we're going to talk about with this video is division. And we're going to talk about conjugates of a complex number. And really, it's what's nice about fractions is that whenever we're dividing fractions, really all we're doing is multiplying. So let's just even talk about that. With the division problem, people think of it differently. So if I said something like, what is 32 divided by 8? Some of y'all actually picture 8 going into 32, and you say 8 will go into 32 4 times. Some of y'all look at it and say, okay, what number times 8 is 32? Neither way is correct, neither way is wrong. But the emphasis of what I'm getting at and what I'm saying is that really division is another form of multiplication, and it depends upon your mindset and how you look at it. And we'll show that here in what we're going to do. Our division problems turn into multiplication problems. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the conjugate of a complex number. And I have some examples written down here, and these examples are written in the complex number notation. So I'm given a plus bi. The conjugate is a minus bi. I'm given a minus bi. The conjugate is a plus bi. So what do you think the conjugate of these two are? Look at the pattern. Critically think about what you're seeing. What is actually changing? Pause the video and answer the questions, and let's see if we get the same answer. Okay, so my conjugate for a negative a plus bi is a negative a minus bi and a negative a plus bi. To make a conjugate, use the opposite sign separating the terms of the complex number. Notice that my a's stayed the same for my conjugate. What changed was the sign separating my conjugates. To divide complex numbers, you're going to multiply by the conjugate. And the reason that this is nice is because it's considered to be improper to leave an imaginary number or a complex number in the denominator. So the product of a complex number and its conjugate is a real number. So we remove that imaginary number from the denominator. And just looking at multiplying conjugates, hopefully you'll be able to see, we've already covered multiplication, so this turns into 4 minus 6i plus 6i minus 9i squared. What happens to my middle terms? They cancel out. That's what we do when we multiply conjugates. Those are gone. I'm left with this, and my I squared turns into a negative 1. Remember, I squared equals a negative 1. So I'm left with a negative 9 times a negative 1, which is a positive 9. So I have 4 plus 9, and that is 13. I went from a complex number, meaning I have real and imaginary components, to a real number. So pause the video and work this one. Alright, so a negative 5 times a negative 5 is 25. A negative 5 times I is a negative 5i. A negative I times a negative 5 is a positive 5i. And a negative I times a positive I is a negative I squared. These cancel each other out. I'm left with 25. A negative I squared. I squared is a negative 1. A negative times a negative 1 is a positive 1. So I'm left with 25 plus 1, 26. Okay, so I've showed you the purpose is to remove the imaginary components from the denominator by multiplying. Now what I want you to do is you're going to find the conjugate of this quotient, and you're going to multiply both denominator and numerator by that conjugate and simplify. Go ahead and pause the video and let's see if you can't do this one on. Critically think about what you're doing. You know how to set up your conjugate, and I'm telling you this, you're going to multiply, because remember, this is the same thing that we did before. Whatever you do to the denominator, you must also do to the numerator. So we're going to do the same to both, all right? And then simplify. Okay, so we're ready? All right, my conjugate is going to be 2 minus 2i. And I'm going to multiply by both numerator and denominator by this value. And I'll change that equal sign to multiplication sign. Alright, so what does this equal? Well, as we talked about up here, I'm eliminating the imaginary numbers, and I'm just going to have a real number down here. But I need to do some factoring, or some FOIL or distribution. So 2 times 2. Okay, over let's see, a negative 4i and negative 6i, it's a negative 10i, and this turns into 6 times a negative 1, so minus 6, so I have this right here. So what I end up with is a negative 2 minus 10i. Down here, my middle terms cancel. This is 4, and this is a negative 4 times a negative 1 plus 4. It's 8. But that's not in its simplest form. 2 is a factor of all of these terms. I can pull a 2 out of all of them. And look, you can look at this problem as this also, in case you guys haven't seen this or come to it intuitively. This is what this is. They have a common denominator, so I can just combine those and just have the numerator as that expression. 2 will go into all of these. So how do I write my answer? Negative 1 minus 5i over 4. It is now in its simplest form. Okay, so if you didn't get this one right and you realized your mistake, pause the video and try to rework this one. Okay, so let's look at it. First off is establishing, I'm going to change that, that's a multiplication now. My conjugate, negative 4 minus 2i. Again, I just changed that middle, or the mathematical operation in between the two terms. And now I'm left with the multiplication problem. I need to distribute all my terms. So negative 20 minus 10i plus 4i plus 2i squared over, that's 16, plus 8i minus 8i minus 4i squared. Okay, so up here this becomes a negative 6i. This is 2 times a negative 1. Again, I squared equals a negative 1. They're touching, so it's multiplication. 2 times a negative 1 is a negative 2. So up here I have a negative 22 minus 6i. Down here, middle terms cancel. This is the same as a negative 4 times a negative 1, so that's 4. So I have 16 plus 4, that is 20. Again, I need to simplify that expression. What number will go into all three of these terms? Number 2. So I have a negative 11 minus 3i over 10. And that is my answer. So our division problem actually turns into a multiplication problem. Okay guys, continue to watch the videos from the publisher. Structure and critically think about your homework. Reason through it. Work the problems in your homework as many times as you need to where you can say, I know how to do that work. All right. Good luck with your remaining homework.